Drew Barrymore is not my girlfriend in this scene, but that's probably a good thing because I would have been gutted by the end of it.
What? I see this as an absolute win.
The events of this movie happened 20 years ago, but even then, stovetop popcorn was very much a thing of the past.
Nearly 25 years ago now, and I'm pretty sure back in 1996, I was eating stovetop popcorn. Hell, you can still find this in grocery stores today.
Halloween. No, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters.
Nope, never heard of it. Thanks for the plot synopsis.
This is the first of many whiffs by Jeremy and CinemaSins regarding the tongue-in-cheek nature of this film. If you don't get it, this is the movie poking fun at itself as Scream is a satire of horror films. There's that word again.
What's yours?
Yes.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
That movie, it was scary.
Wow, well, the first one was, but the rest sucked.
Even Wes Craven's New Nightmare? Hello, Wes? Are you gonna let you get away with this?
The difference is that New Nightmare isn't part of the same continuity as Nightmare on Elm Street and treats that film as a film within a film. Besides, can a creator take shots at themselves? Didn't you do that in Everything Wrong with CinemaSins Volume 1 and 2? Small correction here. He did make fun of himself in Volume 1, but in Volume 2, all they did was take passive-aggressive digs at people who criticized them. That kind of lets you know that they aren't really satirical, because if they were satirical, there would be no reason to set the record straight or explain their jokes. Satire doesn't make excuses for itself.
Does she know about answering machines? Not answering the phone is very much an option.
Yes, but at this point, the killer has made it clear that he can see her, and it's actually a great idea to keep him on the phone where you know he isn't directly next to you, and you can plan your escape.
Jesus, every fucking door in this house was unlocked. How many doors does someone need to go in and out of in one house while you're alone without ever locking them back?
Being that I grew up in South Central LA, I'm inclined to agree with you on this point. However, Casey and her parents are wasps living in a huge house in the middle of nowhere. They quite literally had no reason to lock these doors until Ghostface decided to make an appearance.
I am 2 seconds away from calling the police.
They'd never make it in time.
So therefore, don't even bother, because the killer on the other end of the line said so.
Up until this point, Stu hasn't necessarily said or done anything to warrant an actual police call yet besides be persistent and creepy. The cops most likely wouldn't come if you told them you were getting creepy phone calls, and if they did, they would take their time.
To see what your insides look like.
Who's there?
Land shark?
Funny joke. So this is what I was referring to earlier. This was the first credible threat Stu has made, and she immediately hangs up the phone and the doorbell rings. This nullifies your previous sin.
My boyfriend will be here any second and he'll...
The killer wasn't threatened by the police, but he will definitely be frightened of the imminent arrival of her high school-age boyfriend.
Steve was already on his way to Casey's house, so he would be closer than the police would have been, which is why she mentioned him. And considering an admittedly weakened Stu got his ass kicked by Neve Campbell at the end of the movie, I think a football player could take him.
How did the killers get Steve taped up to this chair since the last time Casey looked outside? Remember, one of them is talking to Casey, and the other one is probably Matthew Lillard, so setting this up would not be easy.
Come on, Jeremy, it's obvious they intercepted Steve before he got to her house. They taped him up before the phone calls and set him up outside when they had her on the phone. Considering it's 2 of them, yeah, I'm pretty sure this was easy.
I saw that movie 20 goddamn times!
You did? How could you be so well-versed on the first Friday the 13th and not know Mrs. Voorhees was the damn killer?
That is literally the point Stu makes over the phone. You can't send the movie for something they state themselves.
20 goddamn times!
Then you should know Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel.
Realize that absolutely no one is visible in these shots who could be cutting out Steve's intestines right now, unless there was some sort of elaborate Rube Goldberg device knocking over a final domino.
That's because during this scene, the lights on Steve went out. While Casey ran to cut them on, Stu was able to kill Steve.
There are 2 main doors to your house.
Just 2? Last time she ran around locking doors, I counted at least 5.
Which is why Stu says main doors, you absolute buffoon.
There's no way, even in a 2-killer system, that the one in costume could have known Casey was here for a perfectly timed scare, unless he's got a fucking radio in his hood.
Both of the killers are actually here in the house. This particular instance was Billy while Stu was outside on the perimeter after killing Steve. When Casey sees her parents, it's Stu that jumps and ultimately kills her.
Now he's throwing his entire body through the window, like it's no big deal, without a rip or tear in his cheaply made Party City Halloween costume.
People love the comment section. Pop quiz. Do you think the movie or the audience is interested in showing the costume being torn in that particular scene? You have exactly 0 seconds to answer that because the answer is fucking no.
Thankfully, for the sake of the parents' most horrific evening ever, Casey, though stabbed multiple times, still somehow holds on to the cordless phone while being dragged away.
Thanks to my mother's unhealthy addiction to First 48, I know that murder victims tend to form a death grip on things they were holding when they were killed.
You don't say. I thought a death grip was when you don't use lotion while choking your chicken.
Discount Johnny Depp from Crybaby hairstyle.
You could have just called Billy a discount Johnny Depp and not have let it slide, but you went with the pop culture reference, and a sin's a sin.
They're interrogating the entire school.
Maybe they should just look for the person that has a busted lip, broken nose, sore crotch, and a cut-up hand from punching through a window.
History lesson. This movie was inspired by actual events, namely those of the Gainesville Ripper. The reason I bring this up is because during the investigation, the police did exactly what you're suggesting and identified and suspected a mentally ill kid that had injuries to his face due to a car accident. The real killer was eventually found, but not before the media had plastered that kid's face all over the news and essentially ruined his reputation. What I'm saying is, what you're suggesting is not a great idea, and since we know the killers are Stu and Billy, you'd have been just as wrong as the cops were back then.
Are the police aware that you dated the victim?
Apparently not, even after asking the whole damn school questions today.
Since we know Stu's motive for killing Casey was because she dumped him, we, the audience, would think to ask Stu this question. But do you think it makes sense for the cops to go, "Hey, did you date this blonde that was killed last night, even though we also have her dead boyfriend?" Because you would think any cop worth his salt would ask for their alibi.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah, it was.
What? Considering what we find out later, did Stu have a twin that was with her last night? Does she not know the time of death? What the f***? Or are you saying Billy did all that himself?
Throughout the movie, we see that Billy and Stu almost always attempt to give themselves an alibi after a murder, like when Billy shows up at the party and has sex with Sydney. This is most likely what Stu did after they both showed up at Sydney's house to kidnap her father. Also, Randy literally asked that very question.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah, it was. Was that before or after he sliced and diced
Your front porch.
Girl whose mom was killed a year ago and who is home alone now and who knows 2 teens were murdered last night chooses to walk toward the front porch after hearing this.
Do you remember what I said in my Everything Wrong with CinemaSins Cabin in the Woods video? No worries, here's a refresher. This movie serves as a metaphor for slasher films and how we consume entertainment. The people in these films make stupid decisions all the time because if they didn't, there would be no film. When they say,
they don't transgress,
they can't be punished.
what they're actually saying is, if people don't make dumb decisions, there wouldn't be a movie. Thank you, me. No problem, me.
Do Billy and Stu actually want to kill Sydney right now? According to the grand scheme they admit to her later, they try and pin it on her dad, who went crazy on the 1-year anniversary of her mom's death. But today is not that anniversary, and they have a lot more people to kill before the grand finale. So was this the plan, or did they add victims on the fly?
Considering they already have Sid's father, yes, they're actually trying to kill her now. The plan was to make it look like the father went nuts and killed her around her mother's death anniversary, not necessarily on that anniversary. Any time within the 2-day time span would have worked as a plausible motive.
If your phone is dead, then how does your internet work? In 1996, it was pretty much all dial-up.
Sydney isn't using the internet to make this call. This is a teletypewriter program for deaf or hard of hearing people called DefPotech that allows disabled people to make emergency calls. You would think as a hard of hearing person yourself that you know about these programs.
Let me ask you this. What are you doing with a cellular telephone, son?
The 90s, when someone with a cell phone could be considered suspicious just because they had a cell phone.
Is that a sin for the 90s or a sin for the movie? Because in the 90s, mainly drug dealers and money launderers had cell phones as they were prohibitively expensive.
Also, corn checks.
Hey. Outside of frosted mini checks and honey nut checks, corn is the best.
Don't worry, Sid, at school, you'll be safe here.
Also, this laugh.
He left his coat at your house after your mother seduced him.
I saw him leave wearing it.
How did this scenario unfold? Sydney's mom was banging Cotton while Sydney was at home? Then a killer came in and made sure Sydney could see him leaving with Cotton's conveniently left behind jacket on? There's some serious details missing from this narrative.
It's not all that confusing. Sydney was probably coming as the person wearing the jacket was leaving. Obviously, Sydney and her father weren't at home at the time Cotton had sex with Maureen, and Cotton left before Sydney arrived. It was in that window that Maureen was killed, and as revealed in Scream 3, Roman was doing recon on Maureen and Cotton and sent Billy there at the perfect time.
Fairness would be to rip your insides out. Hang you from a tree.
Movie's everyone's a suspect structure is helped out tremendously by the way over the top and most inappropriate principal ever.
That would be true if he weren't killed literally 8 minutes later.
Sydney's almost been murdered twice, but instead of being protected by the police in her own home, she decides to go to a party where someone could easily lose track of her whereabouts.
You would think that a house party with a ton of people and Dewey outside would be a decently safe place to be. I mean, her father isn't home and she already has an escort in Dewey. In theory, the added partygoers makes it more difficult to get her alone.
Hey kids, that's Wes Craven playing Freddy Krueger. And if you're a kid, how do you know what that means? You have awful parents.
Jeremy assumes kids would be watching a rated R slasher movie called Scream, where the goddess herself gets gutted like a third-rate tuna.
So what we are now to believe is that Billy's been hiding in this office this whole time, waiting to kill the principal. Why would the killer be going after this asshole? As bad as this guy is, it's unbelievable Billy or Stu would waste time on him before the big finale.
Billy killed Hembry in order to clear out the people at Stu's party. Later in the film, Stu calls his own house, where Randy answers the phone, revealing to the partygoers that the principal had been killed, which results in them leaving to go view the body. It's amazing you call yourself hyper-observant, because the lie detector test determined that was a lie.
Now that's in poor taste.
Okay, just a second ago we saw the ghost face running around Sydney's backyard. Now both killers are here in the video store, somehow, despite someone running around the Prescott property for what was apparently no reason.
Actually, some time had passed since Billy killed the principal. I mean, you clearly see Randy here at his after-school job, which confirms there has been a time skip. Or you could go with the fan theory that the guy in the costume was Roman from Scream 3.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula.
Randy isn't fired immediately.
If an employer fired someone for every single outburst, Popeyes wouldn't have a single employee.
This store is closing due to the curfew, and not due to the fact that they rent books on tape. Right.
Hey man, this is 1996. In 1999, my English teacher played the Harry Potter books on cassette for our class, and that shit was lit. Books on tape were all that in a bag of chips.
Sydney's father. You made the calls with the cellular phone's been confirmed.
And to Casey Becker, did anyone remember to check the phone records during that? And why would Sid's dad kill Casey and Steve anyway?
You're assuming a lot here based on knowledge you already have. First of all, police don't work out a crime by assuming motive when they have evidence. Motive is a detective and prosecutor's job. People kill for a variety of reasons, and to rule out him killing Casey and Steve because you don't know his motive, even though evidence points to him, is a rookie mistake. Remember, these officers don't know Billy and Stu cloned Neil's phone, although Dewey does suspect it.
That garage is a great place to keep the beer, because it's apparently very cold.
Jeremy points out bazookas on the screen ex machina.
No one seems to be concerned where Tatum is. Also, if there was only beer in the garage, how did no one discover her body wedged in the garage door?
Jeremy thinks cutting the sound and speaking really fast is going to distract us from the fact that he says no one is concerned where Tatum is, while literally showing a scene of Sydney concerned about Tatum.
Nice party, Stu. Tatum, come on! Nobody here but us. Yeah, there she is.
No, I haven't seen her.
Years later, Gail Weathers used this footage to pitch the Paranormal Activity franchise.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I'd have to go with Alien. Classic sci-fi romp with a final girl and everything. What about you? What's yours?
That's easy. It's the one where Jeremy makes a pop culture reference that isn't a sin of the...
Phew! That was scary.
Who'd you call?
What?
Sydney has a suspicion that Billy used his one phone call to call her as the killer while in jail to serve as an alibi. But there are many things wrong with this. I'm doubting why Billy even needed to make a phone call himself when he has Stu helping him out. But that's what this movie is trying to say, because why would Billy even need to lie about who he called if he simply got Stu to make the killer phone call?
This line of reasoning is just you watching the film and telling us what you've observed. There is no sin here because you are agreeing with what the movie is trying to say. If you were framing this as a sin on Sydney suspecting Billy, there was no reason to tell us what you doubt.
Why did the killer decide not to kill Randy with the sudden inspiration to go outside and run towards the news van? Because while this 30-second delay is extremely clever, it makes no sense for the killer to act this way.
Because the entire reason for this murder spree is getting away? Jeremy would be terrible as a serial killer. All right, that's not something I ever thought I would say as a negative, but here we are.
Sydney is able to crawl through a space that is even smaller than the one Tatum tried to crawl through in the garage.
It's clearly bigger, as you see even Ghostface would be able to squeeze through with some effort.
Dewey!
Her mouth says no, but I heard her say Dewey. I have to commend Sydney. Her ventriloquism skills are on point, but this is no time to practice.
God damn it, that was funny.
corn syrup.
So, if that's corn syrup, how did they manage that sleight of hand in the bedroom earlier?
When Ghostface came in the room to murder Billy, Billy's back was to Sidney, easily providing ample opportunity to plant the fake blood.
Oh, this is the greatest part. You're gonna love this.
Wait, you planned this big finale so she'd see your genius? Why were you trying to kill her a million times before this?
Like I said earlier, this wasn't exactly the plan, but since they have her cornered, Stu just decided to have some fun.
Also, didn't Sidney call the cops from Dewey's police car a minute ago? Did the police station just ignore the call about people dying and ignore that Sidney gave a full address where it was all going down?
See how long it takes them to show up? That proves my point back in Sin 9.
And for reasons unknown, Sidney decides to put on the Ghostface costume to kill Billy.
As I've told you before, this film is a satire of horror films and their cliches. This particular instance is Wes Craven turning the final girl trope on its head. You see, satire is supposed to say something. There's a point to it all, and this is precisely why your channel isn't satire, because the things you're saying are pointless.
Also, how the hell did she get the gun? Yeah, Billy dropped it when Sidney stabbed him with the umbrella, and Sidney kicked it away from him, but she never ran in here to get it.
This right here is CinemaSins telling a bold-faced lie. Jeremy explicitly says
Sidney kicked it away from him,
which is him acknowledging that he saw Sidney remove the gun from Billy's reach. He then is apparently assuming you have never seen this movie, because what Sidney actually does is pick up the gun and throw it out the door to where Gail is. So either Jeremy saw this and outright lied about the scene, or he lied about seeing her remove the gun and assumed this was a continuity error because he's bad at his job. And just like the last two movies in this series, both are sinful as shit.
Working, thank you.
Oh, at the video store, I thought they fired your sorry ass.
Twice.